Walters Sports Bar in Navy Yard offers $5 happy hour in both snacks and drinks. To reserve a table, visit waltersdc.com/happy hour.
Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this podcast. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. At hundreds of locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/bluewire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unifydhealing.com/bluewire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.
Shortstop Crawford right behind the Abrams short lead at second. And Garcia hits it in the air left field. Clase going back. Still going back. He's at the wall. He jumps. It's out of here. Into the Seattle bullpen. And a 3-run homer for Luis Garcia Jr. And the Nationals now lead it by a count of 3-1.
France behind the runner now. Winker will be off on the pitch. On 3-2, there he goes. A pitch swung on, hit in the air to deep right field. Haniger going back, way back, looking up. It's going, and gone. Goodbye. Bang! Zoom goes Keibert Ruiz with home run number 3. And it's now the Nationals 5 and the Mariners 1.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Saturday, May 25th. 2024. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark Zuckerman is off for this installment of the podcast, but I am pleased to be joined by the boss of the podcast, Tim Shovers. We have arrived at Memorial Day weekend. Hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. The Nationals Memorial Day weekend got off to a great start. A 6-1 win over the American League West leading Seattle Mariners at Nationals Park on Friday evening in Game 1 of a 3-game series. This was just the Nats' 4th win in 14 games, but this was among the Nats' most complete wins of the season. The Nats, for this regular season now, are 22-27. This installment of the Nats Chat podcast is brought to us by Cape Ivy, which is a D.C. area charity that has donated over 18,000 ponchos to keep kids warm. Visit capeivy.org for more information. The Nats on Friday evening got a great start from MacKenzie Gore. The Nats on Friday evening got more great work from their bullpen. The Nats on Friday evening hit 3 home runs and scored 6 runs. Tim, Friday evening, a very nice evening at Nationals Park.
Yes, it was, Al. Would you look at that? They got good pitching, scored 6 runs, and they won rather easily. When you can put all those things together, good things happen.
There have not been many games like this. There certainly have not been many comfortable games like this. Like, the Nats have had their share of wins this season, but wins by at least 5 runs, as this game was, wins in which you never have to stress, wins in which it feels like everything goes well. I mean, the Nats hit well, the Nats pitched well, the Nats fielded well. It was good to have a game like this, and this win does, over a team leading a division. Now, Seattle isn't like killing it this season necessarily and hasn't been playing its best lately, but the Mariners are in first place in the American League West, and the Nats on Friday evening had their way with Seattle. So a lot of positives from this game. The biggest positive, though, I would say, was MacKenzie Gore, who was ace-like in this win. We all know the deal with MacKenzie Gore. He possesses the highest upside of any Nationals pitcher, certainly at the major league level right now. And Gore at his best is pretty impressive to watch. And what we saw on Friday evening was Gore at his best. 1 run in 7 innings, 8 strikeouts versus 1 walk. He was just terrific. He gave up just 4 hits, which were a solo homer and 3 singles. He threw a lot of strikes, 98 pitches, 65 strikes, just 33 balls. He was pitch efficient as he averaged just 14 pitches per inning. He, on the second pitch of the game, gave up the homer. Gave up a leadoff homer by J.P. Crawford to center field for a 1-0 Mariners lead. And then that was basically it. That was really Gore's only major mistake in the game. His velocity was up. Gore per StatCast, average four-seam fastball velocity of 96.9 miles per hour, which was 0.3 miles per hour higher than his average for this regular season. He had the curveball working, a good number of swings and misses off the curveball in relation to however many curveballs he threw in this game. There was so much to like from MacKenzie Gore, and he pitched like the pitcher we know he can be, and dare I say, we are seeing him become.
Yes, this was the version of him that's an ace tonight. Now, whether he's a number one or number two, we'll find out. But, one of his biggest problems have been pitch efficiency, and as you mentioned, he fights through that. He gets to 7 innings. If you want to be a great pitcher, can't just, rack up the outs with the pitch total running up. MacKenzie Gore saw that. He saw too many outings where 4 or 5 bullpen arms were needed behind him. So he eats up innings tonight, and he eats up outs. Overall, you could say, looking through this might be his most encouraging start since he came to the Nationals, only his second time throwing 7 innings, and that, oddly enough, came in May of last year against the Royals. So let's see if this becomes a pattern for him, getting into the 6th and touching the 7th inning.
Second consecutive start in which MacKenzie Gore demonstrates more pitch efficiency. We know that had been an issue. The last 2 starts, he has been better in that regard. You look at his numbers now for this regular season, 10 starts, ERA of 3.04. So he's nearing getting that ERA to beneath 3 a good chunk of the way into the season. We're essentially a third of the way now into the regular season. So this is when stats start to matter. Gore's whip is at 1.29 and his strikeouts per 9 innings at 10.46. And it was interesting, and I know this is only, social media, so you can't go too crazy with it, but the Nationals' official X account, the team's official Twitter account, after Gore's outing, posted a graphic of Gore, with some of his stats from the game, and above the graphic was SP1. We know in football there's the phrase, when you have a franchise quarterback, you say you have a QB1. That's really what that means, even though QB1 technically is whoever is your starting quarterback. But the implication here, SP1, is that Gore pitched like an ace and is perhaps becoming the ace. And I thought it was interesting and notable and perhaps even bold that the Nats put out a tweet like that to say, hey, this guy is our guy. This guy is our ace. This guy is our SP1. So that stood out. And we know that this is what he's supposed to be. Gore is not here to be a nice pitcher. He's not here to be a number 3. He's here to be a number 1. He has that kind of talent. And it is so good to see him really blossoming into that. Now you still have to see more, of course, but when you rank the positives from this national season, and the positives can kind of shift, a month ago, CJ Abrams was a strong positive. I think he's still a positive, but we know that he's had a rough May. But when you rank the positives from this Nats season, I think you can make a compelling case that Gore's number 1.
I would make the case that Gore's number 1, just for the reasons you laid out. Also, when you add in the fact that Gray's been out since April 9th, so basically there's been no Josiah Gray this year, and the version we had was not very good, and we still have not had Kay Cavalli pitch above Florida. So, yeah, I think it's definitely the number 1 thing. It was CJ Abrams through April, but now at the end of May, it's clearly Gore.
He's doing a really good job, and I give him credit. I give the Nats coaching staff credit, Jim Hickey, Sean Doolittle, etc. And this is very encouraging. We wondered, Abrams, when he was going well, he would seem to be the leading candidate to be the Nats All-Star this season. You know what? MacKenzie Gore is putting together quite the All-Star case.
When Meg Smith's son couldn't stay warm in the hospital, she designed fleece ponchos that kept him warm and wouldn't interfere with his IV lines. Now, Meg donates ponchos made with fun fleece fabrics to other hospitalized children through an all-volunteer nonprofit. Cape Ivy is a D.C. area charity that has donated over 18,000 ponchos across the country to keep kids warm in memory of Meg's son. Check out their website, capeivy.org. For each $10 donation, a child receives a poncho. That's CAPEIVY.org.
Julio Rodriguez is line to left center, fly to right, fly to center. First pitch swung on, slow ground ball to third. Charging in Senzel Gloves, throws on the run to a stretching Gallo. It is in time, and a Curly W's in the books. A good start to the holiday weekend here at Nationals Park.
The Nats bullpen, once again, was very good. We did have that blow-up game a few games back, but by and large, this bullpen has been a lockdown pen. 2 Nats relievers combined for 2 scoreless innings. Hunter Harvey, a perfect top of the 8th. Dylan Floro, a scoreless top of the 9th. With 2 strikeouts. We thought we might see Kyle Finnegan. It feels like we haven't seen him in about a year and a half for a variety of reasons. He just hasn't come in any games here lately. But the Nats ended up scoring enough runs to where there was not a save opportunity in that 9th inning. You know, Harvey only threw 10 pitches in that 8th inning. I wondered if we might see him in the 9th just because, you know, you can maybe get away with only using 1 reliever in this game. But of course, doing that would have probably meant that Harvey could not pitch in at least game 2 of this series. So Davey Martinez opting to go with Dylan Floro to close out the game. And Floro, you know, we've talked about this. Floro is having a really good season. You talk about all-star candidates. Dylan Floro, 23 games, 24 and 2/3 innings, 0.36 ERA for this regular season. I know that non-closers don't usually get all-star consideration. I really think people got to get away from that. Like, if you're a great reliever, you're a great reliever. He is putting up some tremendous numbers. And Hunter Harvey for the regular season here, 23 games, 25 innings, ERA at 2.52. You look at Harvey, Floro, Finnegan, all 3 guys having very good seasons. Derek Law is having a good season. You know, we've talked about the depth that has been on display with this Nats bullpen, but it continues to stand out. This is the best early season Nationals bullpen I can remember the team having. This has really been good stuff.
I was just going to say, Al, is this the best bullpen they've ever had for the first 2 months of the season? It sounds like we're on the same page.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, you're not exactly choosing from a lengthy list, right? Okay, I mean, we know how these Nats bullpens have been, but even when the bullpen wasn't necessarily like a huge problem, as was the case in 2017 and 2019, I don't remember seeing a Nats bullpen April and now almost all the way through May and saying to myself, wow, you know, that's a great pen. Now, the Nats have ended up having decent bullpens in some seasons. It's not like they've all been bad. And we'll see what becomes of this bullpen. We know that things can change quickly, but so far, I mean, man, this has been some bullpen. And you know, it's not just 1 or 2 guys. It's like 3 or 4 or 5 guys even at times who you have felt at least reasonable confidence in. So really good stuff. And I don't want to take it for granted because if you're a Nats fan, like you have been plagued by some wretched bullpen work over the years. You are not getting that this season. I said this the other day. I mean it. The Nats so far this season have playoff caliber pitching. I don't think you can emphasize that enough. The starting pitching has been postseason caliber. The bullpen work has been postseason caliber. This is such an improvement from what we've had here these last few years.
Harvey comes in the 8th inning. It's a 4-run game, 5-1. You have full confidence in him to get the 3 outs. And then Davey gives his closer the evening off. No problem. Floro pitching very well. So not only are the numbers good, but the confidence is there and the flexibility is there in all of these things. It's been a long time since the Nats have had that. Even when they had good teams with great starting pitching and solid offense, you would have these unreliable bullpens. And so it sort of feels, you sort of almost have a guilt for being so comfortable with how the bullpen is this year because we're not used to that here in D.C.
No, and you're not surprised when the pen comes through. And if you follow, you know, MLB, you watch other games, you look at other teams, you don't take a good bullpen for granted because every day throughout the MLB season, there are examples of bullpens that do not come through, that allow big leads to become small leads, allow leads to become deficits. And the Nats, for the most part, have not had that this season. So really good to see that. And really good to see the Nationals offense on Friday evening hit the home run. Friday was a hot and humid day in the Washington, D.C. area. So, you know, it was late May, but in a lot of ways it felt like a July day in D.C. And the balls were flying out of Nationals Park, at least when it came to the Nats. Now, we had the early game home run by the Mariners. That ended up being their only home run. The Nats out-homered Seattle in this game 3-1. The Nats only had had 8 hits, but the Nats had 3 home runs. It was interesting with the offense, 6 runs on 8 hits and a walk, 1 for 2 with runners in scoring position. This wasn't really like a dominant offensive performance by the Nats, but you did get 3 home runs. We so rarely have had that with the Nationals these last few seasons, and you see the beauty of the homer. You cannot have many hits, you cannot draw many walks, you cannot have many opportunities with runners in scoring position, and yet you can still score 6 runs in a game. Why? 3 home runs. The home run barrage from the Nats on Friday evening got going courtesy of Luis Garcia Jr. And, we talked about MacKenzie Gore being a bright spot for this Nats season. Luis Garcia Jr. clearly is one as well. Garcia on Friday evening as the Nats starting second baseman and cleanup batter, 1 for 4 with a 3-run homer. Garcia in a Nats 3-run fourth, a 1-out first pitch, opposite field, 3-run homer to left field for a 3-1 Nats lead. We know that going opposite field is a Luis Garcia Jr. thing. He, for this regular season now, has an OPS of 774, 325 on base, 449 slugging. Really good stuff from Luis Garcia Jr. He was a big question mark coming into this season. He really has asserted himself as not just the Nats' number 1 second baseman, but he game in and game out is batting, say, in the 4 spot or the 3 spot or the 5 spot. Like, he's not being buried 7, 8, or 9. We are seeing Luis Garcia Jr. bat high, or at least relatively high, in Nationals lineup. So home run number 1 came from Luis Garcia Jr. Home run number 2 for the Nats in this game came from Keibert Ruiz. Yes, Keibert homered in this game. He is the Nats starting catcher and number 6 batter, 2 for 3 with a 2-run homer and a single. We have seen Keibert be better lately. This is encouraging. Hopefully he finally is getting going. But Keibert in the Nats 2-run 6 on Friday evening, a 2-out full count 2-run homer to right field for a 5-1 Nats lead. That homer went a projected 406 feet per Statcast, just his 3rd home run of this regular season, and Keibert in the bottom of the 4th had a 2-out opposite field single to left center field. And then the final Nats homer in this game, Eddie Rosario. He is your Nats starting right fielder and number 2 batter, 1 for 4 with a solo homer. Rosario in a Nats 1-run 8th, a leadoff homer to right field off Mariners reliever and former Nats pitcher Austin Voth for a 6-1 Nats lead as the Eddie Rosario month of May continues to roll on. Rosario now a team-leading 7 home runs on the regular season. He and C.J. Abrams are tied for the team lead in home runs, and I'm sure more than a few Nats fans chuckled at Eddie homering off Austin Voth, as happened late in the game.
Good to see Austin Voth, though. I was listening to the radio for the 8th inning, and Charlie Slows is talking about Voth and all the starts he made in 2019. I forgot that he is one of the slew of pitchers that, I forgot he was on the 2019 Nats, frankly. Glad to see him back. And, no complaints for the offense tonight. Saying they need to hit more homers. They hit 3 tonight. They went out and won. And, oh, by the way, nice to see multiple hits for C.J. Abrams and for Keibert Ruiz. 2 guys that you want to see positivity out of the stat sheet. We got that tonight. So we have plenty of evenings where we complain about the offense. Fortunately, this Friday night, not one of them.
Yeah, C.J. Abrams in this game, Nats starting shortstop, number 1 batter, 2 for 4 with 2 singles. Now, he did get picked off and tagged out in an attempted steal of second base. Abrams in the bottom of the 7th, a 2-out opposite field, a broken bat, infield single toward third base, despite having been down in the count at 1.12, but he then was picked off and tagged out in an attempted steal of second base. It's interesting. We have seen the Nats running game really get slowed down here over the last, week or 2. We saw for a while the Nats stealing so many bases and having so much success on the base pass. We haven't had nearly as much of that lately, but when you hit 3 home runs, that kind of a thing ends up not mattering as much. The Nats got contributions really up and down the lineup. Joey Meneses starting DH and number 3 batter, 1 for 4 with a single. Nick Senzel starting third baseman and number 7 batter, 1 for 3 with a single. Jesse Winker as the starting left fielder and number 5 batter went 0 for 3, but he drew a key walk in this game. That 2-run 6th inning for the Nationals, Winker drew a 2-out walk despite having been down in the count at one point. 1-2. Going back to Luis Garcia Jr. So, you think about the rebuild and you have your long-term vision for what this thing could be, right? Like we think about the diamond and we think about, all right, long-term, Keibert Ruiz at catcher, Brady House at third base, CJ Abrams at shortstop, and outfield in some form of Dylan Cruz, James Wood, Robert Hassel III. Obviously, things can change. We'll see what happens with Elijah Green. There are others to be thinking about. There's Yo-Yo Morales, who potentially could be the long-term first baseman if House is a third baseman. But when it comes to Luis Garcia Jr., do you think that he is asserting himself as the long-term second baseman, or do you think we still need to see a lot more before we can say something like that?
I think he's asserting himself as the long-term solution at second base. Hats off to Luis Garcia Jr. this year. Really impressive. The Nats organization called him out last year, an unexpected and sudden demotion to AAA, and he was able to get called back up before the year ended, and he has really responded because the pressure was on. So I really love what I see from Luis. I don't think that Trey Lipscomb's ever going to be the permanent second baseman if he ever gets a permanent infield position. So if I'm Luis Garcia Jr., I keep this up and I like where I'm at.
He is doing what you wanted to see Victor Robles do these last few years, and that is go from being in the doghouse to being back to being someone viewed as a long-term fixture here. And, Robles continues to be buried. He again did not start. He now is as clearly as ever a backup outfielder on this team. I mean, Jacob Young now starts basically every game in center field, and Lane Thomas still has not been activated, but we know that is coming at some point. He's going to be continuing his rehab assignment in the minors for at least a little bit, but probably not for long. And I think at this point, the widespread expectation is that when it's time to activate Lane, it will be Robles who is the odd man out. You can't say that with certainty, but boy, I mean, you go by the actions, right? You go by who's playing and who isn't playing. Jacob Young plays every game. Joey Meneses, for all of his struggles, plays every game and continues to bat up in the upper portions of Nats lineups and has been better lately, to his credit. So, are they going to make a move with Young or Meneses, or are they going to make a move with the guy who is barely playing at this point and who had a screw up not long ago that was so bad, multiple screw-ups in the same game, to where he got ripped publicly by both Davey Martinez and Mike Rizzo, Victor Robles. So, yeah, it doesn't look like it's happening for Victor. We'll see. But with Luis Garcia Jr., there is, I think, a really encouraging tale of a guy who was well-regarded, then fell out of favor, and now is back to being well-regarded. And that's really cool to see, and I hope like heck that he keeps it going. But, you could argue he's been their most consistent batter this season. Abrams was great in April, but has had the bad May. Jesse Winker got off to a bad start, has since cooled off. Eddie Rosario was really bad in April, has been, great in May. But in terms of a consistent offensive presence for the Nats, I know there have been some ups and downs. There has been some ebb and flow. But I actually think you could say that Garcia has been the Nats' most consistent hitter this season.
Yeah, as you say that, I'm trying to think of who would be ahead of that, and I don't have anything to top that. And Al, you were talking about Robles and Young earlier in the lack of steals. The last time that I hosted was after Mother's Day when the Nats lost in Boston in the series finale. That was a really bad game for Victor Robles. He's still on the team because Lane Thomas has not been called back up, but we talked about that day that his days were numbered. And it hasn't been 2 weeks yet, and it looks like we probably were correct on that one. And also, ever since Young got thrown out stealing to end the game in Boston, that seems like when the Nats' running game has slowed down ever since. So I don't know if the two things are correlated.
Yeah, look, it was going to be difficult to continue to steal bases at the rate at which the Nats were stealing bases. It's just hard to keep that up. So you figured it was going to slow down. It really has slowed down. But, if you hit homers, then you don't have to steal bases like crazy as the Nats were doing. So hopefully what we saw on Friday evening is a sign of things to come.
From grown-worthy dad jokes to patching up skinned knees, your dad is one of a kind. This Father's Day, give him a gift that is guaranteed to take him to his happy place. Omaha Steaks. Order mouth-watering gift packages starting at just $89 when you go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code NATSCHAT at checkout. Each package is backed by their unconditional money-back guarantee. Show your dad the love he deserves with a gift as unforgettable as he is. Visit omahasteaks.com, promo code NATSCHAT at checkout. Here's your Dylan Cruz update for the game played on Friday evening as Cruz hit cleanup and played right field for Harrisburg. 0 for 5 on the evening, struck out once. He's hitting .267 this season. Lane Thomas continuing his rehab, DH, hit leadoff, 2 hits, a single, and a double. Now here's Davey Martinez for the latest on Thomas.
They're there right now, so I'll talk to him after the game tonight and see if he wants to stay there or go to Rochester.
Some news and notes with the Nats in terms of some pregame items. So, interestingly, the Nats are giving some extra rest here to Mitchell Parker, your starting pitchers for the Nats in this series. And the Nats did not put out a list of probable starters for this series until Friday. We did not get this list on Wednesday, as is customary. You get the list of the probable starters for the next series on the day of the final game in the previous series. But we had MacKenzie Gore on Friday evening. Game 2 of this 3-game series against the Mariners at Nationals Park is on Saturday afternoon at 4:05. Trevor Williams will be the Nats starting pitcher. And then game 3 of this series, Sunday afternoon at 1:35, Patrick Corbin will be the Nats starting pitcher. So, we thought that at some point we might see the Nats try to work in some extra rest for a young pitcher in Parker, and we are seeing that here in this series. I mentioned Lane Thomas. According to Davey Martinez, Lane is going to keep on going with the minor league rehab assignment with AA Harrisburg. Could go to AAA-Rochester, but it sounds like Thomas will be reevaluated after the weekend. So we thought that we would see Lane potentially in this series against the Mariners. Doesn't look like that's going to be happening. The continued comeback of Josiah Gray, a 2-inning live bullpen session on Saturday. Cade Cavalli is scheduled to throw again on Saturday. And then the item that probably got the most attention with the Nats over the last, 48 hours, James Wood being pulled from a game from Rochester. And nobody knew why in the moment. And of course, everybody got all excited thinking, okay, this is it, right? Because when a team pulls a well-regarded prospect from a minor league game, many times that is a precursor to the prospect being summoned to the majors. But it turns out that Wood is dealing with right hamstring tightness, and he was taken out of the game as a precautionary measure. But if you are on X, you saw an excitement that was pretty funny to read, certainly in hindsight. Because look, in the moment, you don't know. And so you get excited that maybe now finally is the time. Everyone is on pins and needles, it feels like. James Wood, when is he going to be called up? It's going to happen at some point. It feels like it's going to happen soon, but it obviously is not happening just yet.
Yeah, well, I will say this. He was not in the lineup Friday night for Rochester. It's the first game he's missed this season. And having started to pay attention to these lineups on a day-in, day-out basis with Cruz last year, updates are few and far between. And sometimes they say a guy's all right, and then he's out for a week, and it's day-to-day. We've seen it at the major league level. So I am very interested to see when James Wood returns, precautionary or not. Selfishly, I'd like it to be Saturday because if he misses 2-3 days in a row, who knows what's going on here?
Yeah, minor league injuries do tend to be cloaked in secrecy. That's for sure. We saw that with Brady House last season. We saw that with Dylan Cruz earlier this season, and we'll see if we see that with James Wood. One thing about Wood continuing to be kept in the minors is you don't want to see him get hurt. And, he ends up being there for a lot longer than you anticipated. Like, you kind of feel like, okay, if you're going to have him do this well in the minors and you feel like he's ready, and, I've said this and I still do mean this, I respect the Nats sticking to their developmental process. I do wonder, though, at this point, what exactly do they need to see? I mean, he's hitting right-handed pitching. He's hitting left-handed pitching. He's hitting for power. He's playing good defense. I don't really know what there is left for him to accomplish. But you don't want him while he's lingering in the minors to all of a sudden, get an injury like that and end up having to stay in the minors for longer than you ever wanted. But, this could be just, your basic rudimentary hamstring tightness. He misses a day or two, and then that's it. So we shall see. But yes, the wait continues on James Wood. Him being pulled from that game on Thursday was not because he's about to be promoted. At least it doesn't look like he is about to be promoted. This installment of the Nat Chat podcast brought to us by Cape Ivy, a D.C. area charity that has donated over 18,000 ponchos to keep kids warm. Visit capeivy.org for more information. You can hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We have a website that we invite you to check out as well, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. If you are interested in sponsoring the podcast, we'd love to have you on board, see what we can do for you. You can email Tim at natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Tim Shovers, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Pitch swung on it high in the air to deep right field, down the line toward the corner. This ball is going, and gone. Goodbye. Into the Nationals bullpen. Bang, zoom goes Eddie Rosario with the Nationals' third home run of the night. This is the first solo shot. It's Rosario's 7th home run of the year. That is his 6th home run in the last 16 games for Eddie. And the Nationals adding on. It's now Washington 6, Seattle 1.